of Savant Protection. They're a whitelisting company. How are you?
Good, Angela. Thank you. How are you?
Good.
Good.
So I understand that a lot of companies are deploying whitelisting technologies to protect against the threats that are making their way past antivirus filters. Is that right?
Right. Well, there's a lot of the threat market has exploded, and it's difficult for antivirus. The idea of antivirus was created during a time when the threats were not as prevalent as they are today, or as just the volume and the sophistication of threats. And the threats are hitting at all levels. So large companies are fairly sophisticated and use multiple levels of defense to stop these threats. Small organizations are not so fortunate to have the sophistication that it takes.
Right, so why are some of these threats making their way past AV? Zeus is a good example. We do a lot of stories on these new vulnerabilities and threats and viruses, and a lot of the times the viruses are actually only caught by, say, 4 of the top antivirus filters, and that was the case with Zeus. So why are they making their way through?
Well, they mutate and they change, and there's so many different versions of viruses coming out so quickly. It's even if the vendors keep up with it, users don't necessarily update their software, so or run the updates, or they may turn antivirus off. According to some studies, upwards of 20% of users actually turn antivirus off. So a lot of the problem has to do with the fact that antivirus slows down the operation of the machine. Someone's trying to get their job done, and they're not thinking about the amount of malware that's coming at them as they do their work. So you sort of have the challenge of antivirus trying to keep up, and at the same time, users not willing to update their software, patch their software, or even run their antivirus to turn it off.
So the problem sounds like it's twofold then.
It's I think that it's time to start for organizations to start considering other approaches. I think a lot of people think antivirus has outlived its purpose. At the same time, it's what we have today for the most part. It's what most people have. So I wouldn't recommend that you turn it off, but I would recommend that you look at some of the other techniques for protecting yourself.
So you said that the threats mutate. What did you mean by that?
Well, a threat, a virus doesn't just come in one form. It's almost like in the medical world, where there's different strains and there's different versions. So attackers have become sophisticated. They'll pick up on what somebody develops, and then they'll develop versions of the same thing, which makes it difficult to keep up or keep track of what the actual virus is.
And are the attackers actually testing their threats against the AV software to make sure it gets through?
Oh, they absolutely do. In fact, the sophisticated attackers that are trying to actually get in and steal information or steal assets or compromise infrastructure know full well that what the first line of defense is, and they will test against the major antivirus products, and as a result, they know they know how to beat the system, essentially. So so it's, again, there's been a lot made of. There's a lot of people that are aggravated with their antivirus. There's a lot of organizations that are aggravated with it, but it's time to look at different approaches, and again, it's a multi-billion-dollar marketplace for antivirus. It's what we all know, it's what we all have, it's what we're required to have actually by a lot of compliance organizations.
Right.
So I think it'll take time for some of the new techniques to find their way into the market with such a big, well-developed marketplace.
So with keeping this information about the threat landscape in mind, how are organizations doing in protecting themselves from these attacks that are not being caught by antivirus? Right.
Well, it would be nice if we could just say, stay away from the internet, and you'll be fine. But it's not just so there's internet, there's filtering of websites, there's VPNs, there's all kinds of techniques that large organizations will put in place. More sophisticated firewalls, the newer firewalls filtering, patching, scanning, all those things will help keep a system clean and keep the bad stuff out. But also organizations are starting to look at an area called application whitelisting, which actually focuses on protecting the executables that are on the machine. So my machine, for example, I think I run about 25 applications. I think I'm a pretty typical user, but there's actually 27,000 DLLs and EXEs on my machine. So the idea is to protect those from being changed, because that's what an attacker will try to do, is plant some code that can remotely execute on that machine. And so one of the techniques for stopping that is application whitelisting. There are other techniques for protecting before you actually get to the computer, but this technique actually goes a long way towards solving the problem of unknown malware.
So the premise is to only allow approved applications to run and not let anything else run?
Either that, or yes, approved applications, or just protect what you have. And if you, a lot of users run unapproved applications. I mean, to get their job done, they go ahead and bypass IT. In fact, somewhere in the neighborhood of about half the users put whatever software they want onto a machine. I mean, after all, it's still called a personal computer. So the whole paradigm for computing is that it's personal, even though the computer may belong to the company that you work for. And so it's impossible to stop that from happening. But once you've downloaded and installed what you want, you should have some way to be able to protect it. So not necessarily forcing a approved whitelisting, that's one technique of doing this, but also just protecting what you have. So.
And then not letting the malware run once it's
right.
If it tries to be installed.
That's right. So if you protect the system, the computer will stay functional and operational. The malware could be on the machine. The malware could come onto the machine. You could click onto an attachment. You could surf the internet and drive-by downloads could try to install, but nothing will run if you're running this type of technique.
Right. Well, it sounds great and very helpful, but it's been around for a while and it's had a little bit of trouble taking off.
Right.
You can't deny that.
No, and just like any product, new technology that enters the marketplace, the whole trick is to make it usable and to make it fit into the existing environment. So one of the big challenges for application whitelisting has been, how do you update the software once you've whitelisted essentially your machine?
Right.
And so the breakthroughs in areas like that, how do you make it easy to validate what applications you're running? How do you make it easy and seamless to run updates without getting the user involved? And the last thing IT wants to do is get the user involved or get themselves involved. How do you fit into provisioning systems and patching systems and all those things? So I think that the idea came along at a time when those systems were just being developed and delivered to the end user environment. And today the challenge, I think, for whitelisting is to fit into an existing environment in large organizations. In small organizations, I think it's a different story. We see people actually throwing out their existing antivirus and just replacing it with whitelisting, which is interesting. So.
Yeah. So in the beginning it would be used in point of sale systems, and then that don't change that often.
Right.
And the argument was that in the PC environment it changes all the time. It's just not manageable and it's not even an option.
That's
and
right.
then others have said that it's just too restrictive, just too difficult, too much of a headache to implement. What do you say to those who are dealing with these threats that are making their way past the defenses that they already have in place, but haven't really considered whitelisting because of the challenges?
Well, it's a matter of what risks are you willing to take. If it's a system that's being locked down, point of sale is a great example, or a water system, or a traffic signal system, or an airplane, and you want to protect the systems. They don't change. Those systems don't change. They perform generally a single function or two, and it's fairly easy to protect them with a whitelisting capability. But in the dynamic user environment, how do you get the protection from whitelisting while keeping the dynamic environment that a user expects, where we're on the internet, we're clicking on attachments, we're downloading software, And I think that you're seeing the breakthroughs start to happen that will make whitelisting come to life for the end user environments. So it's typical of a lot of environments where the technology comes out, great idea, but the devil is in the details of how you implement it.
Right.
And so we're working with everybody from large organizations, Fortune 50 organizations, down to how do we make this work in a small business, to how do we make this work as software as a service. So we'll get there, and it's not just, you can't say to get this capability you have to be willing to put up with all of this aggravation. No, you should be able to get the capability and not have to put up with the aggravation. So that's what we're trying to do.
Good. Well, Paul, thanks for telling us a little bit about application whitelisting and then some of these newer threats and more nefarious threats that we're seeing out there.
Right.
And thanks to you for watching. Have a great day.